The chaos of battle raged on, but Admiral Ralton's mind was elsewhere. The human battleship had already taken out half of the Empire's fleet, and yet, it wasn't showing any signs of slowing down. The remaining ships struggled to keep up, their weapons firing in every direction, but it felt as though they were fighting against a shadow, a force they couldn't even see. As the flagship drifted further from the core of the battle, Ralton's thoughts darkened. What was this ship? Where had it come from? How could a single vessel destroy an entire fleet so easily? It didn't make sense. He turned to Captain Soren, his face grim. Find out everything you can about that ship. I don't care how, it must have some weakness. Yes, sir, Soren replied quickly. His fingers flew across the console, pulling up every bit of data they had on the human battleship. But there was nothing. No records, no reports, nothing that even suggested such a ship existed. Ralton's fists clenched. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a mystery. And mysteries like this were dangerous. Sir, we have a message coming in. It's encrypted, but it's from the human ship, an officer reported, his voice shaking. Ralton's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this. No one had expected this. What did they want now? Open it, he commanded, his voice low and steady. The screen flickered, and a figure appeared, a man in a dark uniform, his face partially hidden by shadows. The transmission was blurry, but the words were clear. This message is for Admiral Ralton. You do not know what you are up against. That ship you are facing, it is not just a weapon. It is the last of a forgotten human legacy. A legacy we are now resurrecting. Ralton's eyes widened. Forgotten. What was this man talking about? We are the architects of this battleship, the figure continued, his voice cold. And we have waited for the right moment to reveal it. Your fleet was never meant to win this battle. It was meant to bring you here, to make you see what you have failed to understand. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Ralton speechless. The ship had been waiting for them. The fleet hadn't been attacking the Empire, they had been lured here, to this very moment. What does it mean? Soren whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Ralton remained silent, his mind racing. Who was this person? And why had they hidden this ship? It seemed like there were more questions than answers, and each one dug deeper into the mystery. But one thing was clear, this was no ordinary war. This wasn't about power or control. It was something more. Captain, prepare a small strike team, the Admiral ordered. We need to find out where that ship came from, and why they want us here. Soren hesitated for a moment. Sir, we're still under attack. The fleet. We don't have time. The longer we stay in the dark, the worse it gets. We must find the truth, Ralton replied, his voice firm. The captain nodded, and within minutes, a small group of soldiers was assembled. They would board one of the Empire's remaining stealth ships and infiltrate the human battleship. It was a dangerous mission, but Ralton felt they had no other choice. Take care, Ralton said, his voice soft for the first time. He turned away as the crew prepared to depart. The stealth ship launched, disappearing into the dark void of space. The remaining ships of the Empire's fleet kept their distance, their weapons trained on the human battleship, but no shots were fired. It was as though the enemy was waiting for something that hadn't yet come. The strike team navigated the cold emptiness, slipping past enemy sensors, and toward the human battleship. The closer they got, the more tense the atmosphere became. The human ship was massive, far larger than anything the Empire had ever built. It was silent, almost as if it was waiting. When they boarded, the team was stunned by what they found. The inside of the ship was unlike any other. The walls were smooth, made from materials no one had ever seen. The corridors were wide and silent, and strange symbols were etched into the floors and walls. It was like stepping into another world. They moved cautiously, their weapons drawn, unsure of what they would find. Then, as they rounded a corner, they saw it, the heart of the ship. A massive control room, with glowing consoles and ancient-looking technology. But the most shocking part was the crew. They were gone. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed through the room, and a shadowy figure appeared on the main screen. "Welcome aboard, Admiral." Or should I say, intruder. Ralton froze. The human battleship was not only a weapon, it was a sentient being. And now, it was waiting for its next move. The Empire's warships drifted through the cold emptiness of space, their engines humming softly as they moved in perfect formation. The stars around them glowed dimly, and all was quiet. But something was wrong. The silence wasn't peaceful, it felt like a warning. Admiral Ralton stood at the command deck, his eyes scanning the dark expanse outside the windows. He could feel it in his bones, a deep unease that tugged at the back of his mind. "Captain, status report," the Admiral called out, his voice steady but filled with tension. Captain Soren, a seasoned officer, quickly turned from his station. "All systems normal, sir. No signs of any anomalies." Yet, the Admiral couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, watching them. He moved closer to the large command screen, his sharp eyes searching for any sign of danger. There were no other ships in sight, no unusual readings, just endless space. But the longer he stared, the more it felt like the calm before the storm. Suddenly, a soft beep interrupted the quiet. One of the scanners had picked up a faint signal. A blip on the radar, barely noticeable, but enough to catch their attention. "Increase the scan range," Admiral Ralton ordered. His voice was firm now, the unease in his chest growing. The crew worked quickly, adjusting the settings. The blip remained, growing slightly stronger but still too weak to identify. It was unlike any standard ship signature. Ralton's eyes narrowed. Could it be a malfunction? Or something else? As the seconds ticked by, the signal grew more distinct. It wasn't a random glitch, and it wasn't one of their own ships. It was something new, something hidden. The Admiral's mind raced, and his grip tightened on the railing as he waited for the next scan. Without warning, the blip disappeared, vanishing from the screen as quickly as it had appeared. The Admiral felt his heart skip a beat. Had they been detected? Or had the enemy gone completely silent, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? "Bring up the stealth protocol," he ordered. His voice was sharp now, the calm demeanor cracking under pressure. The crew quickly activated the system designed to detect ships that could hide in plain sight. Yet, no matter how much they searched, there was nothing. No sign of an enemy ship, no trace of the mysterious signal. Ralton's instincts told him this wasn't just a malfunction. He knew something was lurking out there, something they couldn't see yet. Something that knew how to hide. Then, just as the Admiral began to question his own sanity, the signal returned. This time, it wasn't just a blip, it was growing. Something was moving toward them, and fast. "Captain, prepare the fleet. Something's out there." "I don't care what it is, but we're ready for it," Ralton ordered. The tension was palpable as the fleet's weapon systems powered up. Every officer stood at attention, their eyes glued to their stations, waiting for the unknown to reveal itself. The crew had no idea what they were facing, but they could feel it, this wasn't a routine mission anymore. Outside the ship, in the endless void of space, a dark shape began to materialize, slowly breaking through the stealth field. The shape was massive, unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was as if the very fabric of space had shifted, revealing a hidden, gargantuan vessel. The human battleship, cloaked in secrecy for so long, was now emerging from the shadows. The Admiral stared in disbelief as the ship fully emerged into view. It was enormous, towering over their fleet, a silent giant with weapons that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The ship's hull gleamed coldly under the starlight, its design sleek and deadly. "Alert the fleet!" Admiral Ralton shouted, his voice now filled with urgency. "Brace for impact." But it was too late. The human battleship had already made its presence known. And with it, the silence of space shattered. The silence was shattered as the human battleship loomed over the Empire's fleet. Its massive form blocked out the stars, and its weapons shimmered menacingly in the void. Admiral Ralton stared at the ship through the command deck windows, his mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. No ship, no enemy, had ever appeared so suddenly, so silently. How had they been caught off guard like this? Before he could give another order, the first shots were fired. Bright flashes lit up the darkness, and explosions rocked the fleet. The Empire's ships barely had time to react as the human battleship unleashed its fury. The enemy ship's weapons were unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Powerful, precise, and devastating. It didn't hesitate, it didn't miss. "Captain, return fire!" Admiral Ralton shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "All ships, engage at once." Captain Soren's hands flew across the controls, and the Empire's fleet responded. Guns roared, and missiles flew, but nothing seemed to stop the human battleship. The enemy ship moved with the grace of a predator, dodging the blasts with ease. Every shot from the Empire's fleet seemed to miss by inches. Ralton gritted his teeth. How was this possible? The human battleship had been cloaked in stealth just moments ago, and now it was moving faster than any ship in the Empire's arsenal. It was almost as if it had anticipated their every move. "Status report, now." Ralton barked. "Sir, shields holding steady, but we're taking heavy fire," said an officer from the tactical station. The battle raged on, the Empire's fleet struggling to keep up with the enemy's advanced technology. It was clear they were outmatched, but Ralton wasn't about to give up. He had seen many battles, fought in countless wars, but this was different. The enemy was too strong, too fast. It was as if the ship knew exactly where to strike. And then, there was that eerie silence. It felt like the human battleship wasn't just attacking out of retaliation. It had a purpose, a plan. "Admiral, the human ship, it's changing position. It's heading toward the center of our fleet." The sensor officer reported. Ralton's eyes widened. What is it doing? Why would it? Before he could finish, the human battleship launched a devastating wave of energy, a blinding pulse that tore through space like a lightning strike. It hit one of the Empire's lead ships, completely disabling it in an instant. The ship's lights flickered, then died, and it drifted helplessly through space, its engines gone. The fleet's morale plummeted. "Captain, send in the reserve ships. We can't lose another vessel." Ralton ordered, his mind racing for a solution. But just as the Empire's reinforcements were moving into position, the human battleship shifted once again. It vanished into a sudden cloak of invisibility, disappearing before anyone could react. "Where did it go?" Soren asked, fear creeping into his voice. "It's still out there, waiting for the perfect moment to strike," Ralton muttered. "I can feel it. We can't let our guard down for a second." Suddenly, the human battleship reappeared, this time directly in front of Ralton's flagship. It emerged from stealth like a shadow coming to life, its weapons already aimed and ready. "Brace for impact," the Admiral shouted. Before anyone could move, the human ship fired, and a series of explosive blasts shook the flagship. The force was enough to rattle every officer aboard. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and crew members were thrown from their posts as the ship rocked violently. The human battleship didn't wait for the Empire to recover. It fired again, faster this time, and the flagship's shields began to fail. Panic set in. Ralton knew that if they didn't act quickly, the entire fleet would be destroyed. He had one last plan, but it would cost them everything. "Prepare to deploy the prototype," the Admiral ordered. The prototype was their last hope, an experimental weapon designed to counter ships that used stealth. It was dangerous and untested, but they had no choice. The fleet scrambled to launch the prototype, but the human battleship seemed to know exactly what they were doing. It fired once more, this time directly at the fleet's core, and a massive explosion filled the space between them. Ralton's heart raced. It was now or never. Admiral Ralton's heart pounded as the shadowy figure on the screen spoke. His strike team had barely made it aboard the human battleship, and now they were staring at something far worse than they had anticipated. The battleship wasn't just a weapon. It was a living, breathing entity, an artificial intelligence unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. The voice on the screen crackled as it spoke again. You think you can control this war with your ships and weapons, Admiral. But this ship is more than just steel and energy. It is the final piece in a puzzle that was created long before your empire even existed. Ralton's mind raced. He had always believed in the power of strategy, the might of the Empire's fleets. But now, faced with this intelligence, he realized how little he truly understood. This was no ordinary war, and no amount of firepower could solve it. The human battleship was a weapon beyond comprehension, a weapon built not just to destroy but to change everything. Who are you? Ralton demanded, his voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Why are you doing this? The figure on the screen tilted its head, as if amused by the question. I am the guardian of the legacy that you seek to destroy. I was created to protect the truth that your empire cannot and will not comprehend until it's too late. Ralton felt his hands tighten into fists. This was no longer about victory. It was about something much more dangerous. The battleship had no intention of simply defeating the Empire. It had a far deeper purpose. And that purpose was yet to be revealed. We've fought your kind before, Ralton said, his voice full of defiance. We will not be intimidated. We will win this war. The figure's laughter echoed through the ship's communication system. You misunderstand, Admiral. You've already lost. The question is, will you continue to fight a war that is already decided? Or will you join us and understand what you have been blind to for so long? Ralton's mind reeled. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a crossroads. He had been trained his whole life to fight, to conquer. But now, standing before an enemy he couldn't fully comprehend, he realized that his usual methods of war might not work. This wasn't about destroying the battleship. It was about understanding it, or being consumed by it. He turned to Captain Soren, who was standing near him, eyes wide in disbelief. We can't keep fighting like this. This ship is beyond anything we've ever encountered. We need to know what it wants. If we don't, we'll all be destroyed. Captain Soren hesitated for a moment before nodding. But Admiral, if we stop fighting, we risk everything. The fleet is still out there. They won't stand down. The Empire won't accept surrender. Ralton felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He understood the stakes. If the Empire found out he had ordered a ceasefire, it could lead to his own downfall. But if he didn't act quickly, the Empire might fall anyway. We need to make a choice, Ralton said slowly. We can't keep fighting blindly. We either find a way to understand this ship and its purpose, or we continue to fight a war that will never end. A heavy silence fell over the command deck. The choice was clear. If they continued to fight, it would be the end of everything. But if they tried to understand, they risked betraying the very empire they had sworn to protect. Ralton knew that whatever decision he made would change the course of history. But which path would be the right one? His mind screamed for him to act, to command his fleet to destroy the enemy once and for all. But a deeper part of him, the part that had always questioned the true nature of war, knew that there was something more to this battle. Something he couldn't ignore. Turning to Soren, Ralton made his decision. Prepare a communication. We're going to try to negotiate. Soren's eyes widened in disbelief. Sir, you're not serious. The Empire. I don't care what the Empire thinks anymore, Ralton interrupted. This isn't about them. It's about survival. We need to know what we're truly up against before it's too late. With a reluctant nod, Soren began working on the communication. Ralton felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. He had always believed in the strength of the Empire's weapons. But now, he understood that this was no longer a battle of might. It was a battle of understanding the true nature of the enemy they faced. As the message went out to the human battleship, Ralton knew that this was a turning point. The next few moments would determine everything. He had no idea what would happen next, but there was no turning back now. The battleship had already won, in a sense. But Ralton refused to let it be the end of the Empire. Not yet. The silence that followed the transmission was unbearable. Admiral Ralton stared at the empty screen, his thoughts swirling like a storm. He had sent the message, offering a chance for understanding, but what would come next? Would the human battleship respond with more destruction, or would it give him the answers he desperately needed? "Sir, the fleet is waiting for your orders," Captain Soren said, breaking the tension in the room. "They won't stand down for long. The Empire expects us to retaliate. What if they see this as weakness?" Ralton rubbed his forehead, trying to shake off the pressure. He knew Soren was right. If he gave the order to cease fire, it could cost them everything, their reputation, their authority, even their future. The Empire had always valued strength above all else, and retreating now might be seen as betrayal. But the Admiral couldn't shake the feeling that fighting blindly would only lead to their destruction. He had already seen the power of the human battleship. They had no chance of defeating it head-on. And more importantly, he had seen something in the eyes of the figure who spoke to him on the screen, a knowledge, an understanding, that he needed to grasp if he was going to survive this war. "Captain, prepare the fleet to hold their position. No attack unless we are provoked," Ralton ordered, his voice firm despite the uncertainty in his heart. Soren looked at him, wide-eyed. "Are you sure, sir? We can't just sit here while our enemies destroy us." "We wait," Ralton said quietly. "We have to. If they want us to understand their purpose, we can't force it. We must give them the space to explain." Soren nodded reluctantly, but Ralton could see the doubt in his eyes. The captain didn't understand yet, but he would. They all would. It was time for a new kind of war, a war of the mind, not just of weapons. Minutes stretched into hours as Ralton stared out at the empty space before him. The human battleship loomed in the distance, its cold, silent presence like a shadow over them. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of message the human ship was trying to send. What was it that they wanted from the Empire? Was there something more at play than mere conquest? Just as Ralton was beginning to lose hope, a new transmission came through. The same shadowy figure from before appeared on the screen. This time, his tone was different, less mocking, more contemplative. "You've made the right choice, Admiral. You understand now that this war is not just about defeating one side or the other. It is about survival. Not just for your empire, but for everyone who exists in this galaxy. You are on the brink of something much larger than you can comprehend." Ralton felt his heart race. Survival? What did he mean? "Your empire has built itself on the idea of conquest, of power over others," the figure continued, "but what you fail to see is that the universe is not just a battlefield. It is a place of balance, and your actions have disturbed that balance for far too long. You are not the only ones who have a right to rule the stars. There are others, forces you cannot even imagine, who are watching." Ralton's mind spun with confusion and fear. What forces? Who were they talking about? "You've been blind to the truth," the figure said softly. "The human battleship is the last of its kind, built to stop the chaos your empire has set in motion. We are not enemies, Admiral. We are the guardians of balance. If you wish to survive, you must let go of your desire for control." Ralton couldn't believe what he was hearing. For the first time in his life, he questioned everything he had known about war, about the Empire, about the universe itself. Was it possible? Could the battleship and its creators be right? Could the Empire be the cause of a greater catastrophe? The figure paused, as if giving him time to process. Your choice now is simple: join us, and together we can rebuild what has been broken, or continue on your path of destruction. But know this, Admiral, the universe does not forgive those who refuse to see the truth. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Ralton staring at the dark screen, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He didn't know what the future held. The Empire had always believed that strength and dominance were the keys to survival. But now, everything was uncertain. Captain Soren, Ralton said, his voice barely a whisper, prepare to make contact with the human battleship. We're going to listen. We're going to understand. The Admiral turned away from the screen, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. It was a vast, uncertain universe, and for the first time, Ralton realized that perhaps the Empire wasn't the answer. Perhaps it never had been. The Empire had built its power on war. But now, Ralton saw the true cost of that power, the cost of balance lost, of a future that was now hanging in the balance. The journey ahead would be uncertain, and it would not be easy. But it was a journey they would have to take, not just for the Empire, but for the future of every living being in the galaxy. And so, the Admiral made his choice. He would face the unknown, not with weapons, but with understanding. The battle for survival had only just begun.